Welcome back to Trade Talks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. We've been coming to you live for the past couple of days inside ETFs in Hollywood, Florida, with over 2,000 attendees. We brought to you over 40 interviews, and we're saving one of the top for last. We're going to meet with Richard Tseng. He's a senior portfolio manager in the Chief Investment Office of Bank of America Merrill Lynch Wealth Management. It's quite a lot. That's quite a lot to fit in there, right? So this is really interesting because you manage a multi-asset portfolio that invests in primarily ETFs. So of all the things that you look at when you're performing due diligence and you put this into this portfolio, tell us how that process works.
Absolutely. And good afternoon, and thanks for having me here, Jill.
Thank you.
When doing due diligence on ETFs, I think it's very important to consider three things. First of all, we look at underlying exposures. Second of all, tradability. And last but not least, total cost of ownership. So in terms of underlying exposures, what that means is you may have two ETFs that look similar on the surface, but when you take a look underneath the hood, they may actually be very different. An example of that is value ETFs. Different value ETFs may look at different metrics to actually evaluate whether or not securities are cheap relative to the price. For example, relative to book value, earnings, sales, etc. In terms of country ETFs, South Korea is actually considered an emerging market by some ETFs and an international developed market by other ETFs. So when you build out a portfolio, it's just important to understand if there's overlap in countries or gaps.
All right. So what does the role of security selection play within the context of a portfolio that's a passive ETF?
Right. That's interesting. So even though you're not picking stocks, security selection can be important. A lot of academic pieces and practice shows that asset allocation may be a primary driver of returns in portfolios, but we think that security selection can be important in the context of adding value to a portfolio potentially, or maybe mitigating returns. So I'll give you an example of that. There's over 2,000 ETFs now, so that's a lot of tools in the toolkit for a portfolio manager. And portfolio manager perhaps can use a sector or an industry-based ETF to tilt towards a particular industry within a sector. So, for example, within healthcare, there are biotech ETFs available to use. For example, if a PM utilized the biotech ETF within healthcare, that ETF would have actually outperformed the broader market as well as healthcare in various environments, including 2008 and 2013 as extreme examples. Now, that doesn't always work all the time. In 2016, biotech did underperform the broader market and healthcare.
So how do you see ETFs being used in portfolios going forward? Because as we were talking before, it's almost like ETFs are the new stock picking.
Yes, it's very interesting. So there's many uses for ETFs in portfolios. You see folks using perhaps factor-based ETFs. So that could be perhaps a low vol ETF, a value ETF, or a momentum ETF to tilt towards a particular directional view, or perhaps to maybe supplement the view to mitigate any unintended factor bets within a portfolio. We also see folks in our CIO office combining ETFs along with mutual funds in a hybrid approach and tilting towards one vehicle type over another, depending on the market environment, whether it favors one style over another. In addition, we see a lot of ETF strategists using perhaps a core satellite approach. So perhaps using a broad-based ETF as kind of the foundation of a portfolio, and then supplementing that with a tactical sleeve that seeks to invest in more targeted opportunities, perhaps transformational ideas such as artificial intelligence or robotics, ranging all the way to organic foods and products. So I think it's a very exciting time to be a portfolio manager and an investor in ETFs as they continue to innovate and give investors even playing field across the board.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Fantastic way to wrap up 2 solid days at Inside ETFs. Thanks for spending the time with me. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq.